BIV Today, the daily podcast from the newsroom of Business in Vancouver. I'm Kirk Lapointe, publisher and editor-in-chief. Today's podcast is part of a 3-episode series on how businesses are planning to meet the challenges of climate change goals. The series coincides with Earth Day on Friday, of course. Now, an important challenge we face in the drive to a net zero economy is how we allocate our governmental and institutional investments to shift away from fossil fuels to cleaner technologies and renewable forms of energy. This isn't an easy matter because many of our retirement funds are entwined in investments with conventional energy forms. And it isn't easy for any institution to make clear choices for its customers about how it will involve itself in the economy and how it won't. Now, Vancouver-based Vancity is now the country's largest customer-based credit union, and it made these choices some years back. We want to learn more about what it has meant, what it will mean also for its operations. And my guest is Jonathan Fowlie. He's Vancity's head of external relations and impact strategy. He oversees its key activities in this realm. Good to see you.
Yeah, really nice to be here, Kurt. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about, in general, about how these initiatives on climate action over the years shifted the activities and priorities at a place like Vancity.
Yeah, and I think where you started is probably the right place to start, which is that for the longest time, our focus really was on investments. Where are we making those investments with the dollars that we're putting into the marketplace? And for a while, the financial industry, Vancity was one of the leaders in this space, focused there and focused on operational emissions. So our branch footprint, our head office, what kind of emissions are coming from that? Well, a few years ago, we started to look a bit broader than that on the climate question to say, every loan that we're lending out, whether it be for a mortgage or a small business, what effect is that having on the climate? And I think that's really the next tranche. And so when people are hearing banks and credit unions like Vancity talk about net zero commitments, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about every dollar we lend. For us, it's by 2040. We've said that we're going to get to a point where for every loan we're putting out the door, we will be net zero across emissions for our entire lending book and mortgage book.
Yeah, that's a pretty extensive, robust oversight that you kind of have to have on this, right? The money just can't go into the wrong funnel, can it?
Well, and I'll tell you, I mean, the biggest hurdle to cross out of the gate is measuring that. Like, how do I know exactly what you a Vancity mortgage holder is doing in your home? And so right now we're having to use available data to estimate that based on what we know about where you live, the kind of building you have, and how that stacks up to an average home of that type with that heat source in this market. We need to move towards a spot where we can get better data, where either you're reporting to us or where those averages are getting much more granular and we understand it better. But yeah, I mean, I think we're having much different conversations with particularly business lenders. Not just. I mean, Vancity has long looked to use the dollars we lend in service of community impact, in service of helping develop living wage employers in our economy, local source, and we're adding carbon emissions to that, and having a lot of conversations with small business owners about how to reduce their carbon footprint. And I'll tell you this. What we're finding is that those conversations are not just about reducing emissions; they're also about finding efficiencies and lowering costs. So I think a lot of the folks that we're dealing with are finding real benefit to their business from looking at asking these questions about where their role is in the climate in the climate conversation.
And correct me if I'm wrong. It's not just virtuous, if you want to call it that, but it's also proving now to be good business, right?
100%. I mean, I think for a couple of reasons. There's more and more consumers are really looking to spend their dollars with organizations that align with their values. And for a lot of people, as they look to, particularly in the Vancouver market in BC, we had the heat dome last year that I think really shook people and had people a little bit more aware of the climate change, the actual change of climate change that I think a lot of people thought was way off on the horizon. Visit us literally in our homes last summer. The flooding that happened, likewise. And so I think as these events come closer to home, even we hear news that Kids Pool might not open until mid in the summer. Now that was a king tide, but a king tide that I think mirrored what we're told can be the likely impact of rising seawater. So I think as people are seeing these things happen in their own communities, they're starting to ask the question, how do I spend my dollars to support the companies that are going to be part of the positive change that I want to make? And at the same time, companies are finding that by doing this, they're lowering costs.
Vancity got quite far ahead of a lot of other places around what is now a bit of a classic situation involving a lot of retirement funds, a lot of investments by major institutions, and that is in the area of partaking in fossil fuels and in supporting stocks and investments inside those companies. Again, did that prove to be a good business call?
We certainly think it was. I mean, I think a lot of it was risk-based in terms of some of the projects that we chose not to fund, that didn't get ahead. But for us, again, it was always where's the best place to put the dollars that our members entrust with us within our community. And fossil fuels were just never on that register. It was growing small businesses. It was growing that resilient part of our economy that, I think got stress tested during COVID. And we really realized that a lot of our business members made it through quite well because they were tied into their local economy and quite resilient.
Yeah, you're essentially between two large forces here as a company, and obviously the company's had its own leadership around all of this. But where's the pressure for this, or the impetus for this, come most? Has it come from government leading policy, or has it come from your customer base leading their own patronage of Vancity?
Yeah, I think I'd add a third to that, and it comes from our reason for being. 75 years ago, we were founded really to, at that point in time, believe it or not, it was 14 people who came around a kitchen table in East Vancouver because you couldn't get a mortgage on a house you used to pay. And they wanted to form an open bond credit union that could break through that economic barrier. And I think from that point until today, we've really been an organization that uses the tools of finance to take on really the big challenges facing us. And so, today our members really expect us to build a new resilient economy that works for everyone. And in our structure as a cooperative, they're represented by the directors on our board who they elect. And so the triple bottom line that we have long held, we don't just report against in our annual report, but we are held to account to in our boardroom. And I think that's important, that it sits at the highest level of our governance, that we're not just asked about our annual earnings, but we're also asked about our impact metrics, which, by the way, are also audited by the same firm that does our financial metrics. So it really kind of sits within an ecosystem of what's most important. Well, you got to hold the two together, the social and environmental objectives and the financial ones.
Yeah, you can see where a lot of the behaviors and approaches, practices of your customers have shifted. So I want to get a little bit of a reading from you on where you think that goes, and therefore what kind of impact it has on Vancity and where it goes in the time ahead.
I think our customers, we call them members, just members of the credit union. But I really,
Yep.
I think that we have to understand that our membership is broad and diverse. There are some folks who bank with us because, frankly, we're the closest branch to where their office is, who bank with us because we're the most convenient, because we give the best service. At the same time, we have a very engaged membership that is looking for a partner in creating a clean and fair world. Something that they say, I think the world certainly beyond our organization is coming alive to the fact of the connection between banking and climate change, banking and our economy, banking and the things that we care about. And I think for the longest time, that really hasn't been something people think about. People think about their carbon footprint. Am I flying? Am I driving the kids to soccer? Am I all the things that we generally equate as being part of our carbon footprint? Not very many people have thought about where you put your paycheck at the end of every 2 weeks. But that's a huge factor. you're parking your money with an institution that is going and lending that into the economy, that's making decisions on your behalf with your money. And so I think we're getting a much greater awareness, and I think we're getting people coming to us to say, I want to be part of Vancity because of what you're doing with my money when I'm sleeping.
But it also can't be a financial flop. Otherwise, it's
no,
it's a nice to do, but your members, as you refer to them, would rebel. So you had to have made this also an excellent business case.
And this is the thing. I think, sometimes we're mistaken as a not-for-profit. Let me clear the record. We are not. We're a very profitable organization. And in fact, when you look at factors like what's the real community buy-in for a project or organization? What do the local First Nations think about this particular project or organization? What kind of a following does it have? You're actually de-risking across so many different metrics and so many different possible variables that what you're getting out the other side is a much better read of whether an organization is going to be viable. I see it so many different places where our ability to assess risk is directly related to our ability to see these things across multiple dimensions. And if it's good for the community, then the community is more likely to support it, and it's likely to be a better investment over the long term.
Yeah. Other financial institutions, of course, have moved themselves in this direction too. Maybe not with the same force of Vancity, but they're clearly doing that. What are the kinds of things you think they're asking your people about in terms of what the learning is in this area, so that they don't stumble as they try to make their own transitions?
Yeah, listen, I think every financial institution in the country and in the world has a big challenge ahead of them, and I include Vancity, right? Like we've committed to net zero by 2040 because that's what we think is required, and that's the pace of change that I think needs to happen. We're going to set a target for 2025, which is pretty close on our doorstep, because we feel a need to hold ourselves accountable and not commit to something that's going to happen after we retire. But I think every financial institution that's made a net zero commitment has made a public commitment to both their customers and their shareholders that say, we want to be part of this change. And so now there's a moment in time, a moment I think of reckoning within our economy that says, how are we going to stand behind that? Is it that we're going to divert some kind of niche funds to projects that benefit our community, or are we going to shift our entire business model towards positive impact? And I think that's where Vancity has shown that it's doable. Is that our founding and our history is about not just making money and giving it to good causes, but by making good by doing good, or making money by doing business with organizations that positively contribute.
What remain the big challenges, though, Jonathan, to getting to this net zero situation?
How much time do we have? In all seriousness, I mean, I think that the first one really is data. Really getting a good measurement on where the emissions are coming from our book. We were kind of among the first in North America to disclose that last year, so we've got a starting point. But there's a lot of estimated data in that, and I think we find that the more that we're able to get better data, the more that we learn about what the opportunities and challenges are. But really, the next part after that is how do we go from commitment to action? And those are the hard steps for us. That means that we have to work to try and create an environment where everyone who holds a Vancity mortgage faces an incentive to switch out their natural gas heater for an electric heat pump. And people aren't going to do that just because. And so we are working with government. We are working to figure out what are the products that can help create those incentives. How do we create an environment where that decision is a lot easier, where you have the information to know how that decision will benefit you, both economically and to help our climate. I'll tell you this, I'm switching out my natural gas range, my stove and oven. Actually went on the weekend to do it, and kind of got a smirk from the person saying, "You're going in the wrong direction, man. Everybody wants natural gas cooking." And so, when we're working with our members to make that switch, because we live in a province with 97% hydroelectricity that does not have emissions attached to it. That's the right switch for folks to be making in this economy and in this jurisdiction. And how do we help enable that? And that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, I mean, one of the series that we're doing of podcasts and this premise is with Fortis BC, and they're of course plugging everything in to renewables. And that's their destiny, is getting themselves, with more and more renewables in their mix of energy sources. One thing I am asking everybody in this series, though, is somewhat of the same question, which is this is a very, very big challenge, and it requires inordinate resources in order to make sure that it is done well, that it stands the test, that it's accountable, that the public has enough transparency about it to feel reassured and everything. Are you optimistic you can do it?
You know what, I am, and I think the biggest question you always get in the climate discussion is, we're just a small company, or we're just a small province, or we're just a small country in a global economy, and it's a drop in the bucket. And I think you think about how quickly the world has changed on the question of climate over the past 2 years. I think the world has, the tipping point, we passed it. And I think, frankly, innovation starts with a good idea and it snowballs from there. And I think that the most positive change is that the discussions around climate are shifting from it's a risk to manage to it's an opportunity that we need to chase, that there's jobs here, that there's efficiencies to be found. And the minute that starts happening, that's when I think you start to see people crowding towards innovation, because they see an opportunity. It's no longer a threat to the bottom line to take positive action in climate. It's actually your shareholders are asking for it, your customers are asking for it. And on the other side of that change, you have a more efficient business with a stickier customer. So from my perspective, when you have an economy that's on that kind of a tipping point, I think there's going to be a race towards the innovation, and that innovation is going to start with creative ideas that, frankly, no one has a monopoly on. I think they come from pretty much anywhere. Great.
Well, look, great talk. Thanks a lot, Jonathan. Great to hear you.
Yeah, thank you.
Jonathan Fowlie is Vancity's Head of External Relations and Impact Strategy. It's part of our 3-part series running up to Earth Day on Friday. I'm Kirk LaPointe, Publisher and Editor-in-Chief of BIV. Thanks a lot for watching.